An accomplished woman musician gave a great piano performance for a woman's club. Afterward, over coffee, an admirer from the audience gushed to the virtuoso, "I'd give anything to play as you do." Whereupon the woman who'd given the concert took a sip of her coffee and fixed the red-faced, slightly perspiring matron with a cold gaze, and she said, "Oh, no, you wouldn't." Well, a hush fell over the group, coffee cups stopped on their ways to and from the saucer, and the culprit twitched in sudden embarrassment. Looking about as she repeated, but in a softer voice, her original statement, "I would, too, give anything to play the piano as you do." The virtuoso continued to sip her coffee and shake her head. "No, you wouldn't," she repeated. "If you would, you could play as well. Possibly better, possibly a little worse than I do. You'd give anything to play as I do, except time, except the one thing it takes to accomplish the fact. You wouldn't sit and practice, hour after hour, day after day, year after year." Then she flashed a warm smile. "Understand," she said, "I'm not criticizing you. I'm just telling you that when you say you'd give anything to play as I do, you really don't mean it. You really don't mean it at all." In the pause that followed, a napkin falling to the thick rug would have rattled the windows. The women looked at each other and then back at their coffee cups. They realized that this woman had spoken the truth. They would like to have her talent now, fully matured and developed, but as for putting in the 20 years of work that went into the fashioning of it, no, that was a different matter. Soon the light conversation was resumed, and the incident was glossed over, but not forgotten. People are forever saying, "Oh, I'd give anything," but the fact remains that they don't. They give very little, often nothing, to do the things they say they'd give anything to do. The actor who envies the pinnacles reached by the stars, the small business person, the homemaker, the student, the golfer, the professional person, the aspiring writer, the painter, across the entire spectrum of achievement, the stars are those who have simply given their dedication, their singleness of purpose, their days and nights, weeks and months and years, and when the harvest they have so painstakingly sown and nurtured for so long begins to be reaped, there are others with the same time, the same opportunity, the same freedom, who come up to say, "I'd give anything to be able to do what you're doing, to have the things you have." But as the pianist said, "I'm just telling you that when you say you'd give anything to play as I do, you really don't mean it. You really don't mean it at all. Each of us has the time and the opportunity. If we say we haven't, we're trying to kid ourselves. Everybody ought to become great at something. What is it that you'd give anything to become? Well, then give it, and you'll become it. Sometimes it seems as though there are far too many spectators and not enough players. Maybe we're so busy watching the world and everyone else we forget we've got one of our own to win."
You know what the 4 things are that an education can give you? Well, they're 3 P's and an F. The 4 great objects of life and education can be listed as poise, power, peace, and freedom. Let me tell you the 10 marks of an educated person, and this doesn't necessarily mean a college degree. You can check them off as I run down the list and see how you qualify. Number 1, an open mind. This is the ability to toss even your most cherished beliefs into the trash can if you find they're not true. Number 2, the educated person will listen to all the information someone else can give him on a subject, and then draw his own conclusions. Number 3, the educated person never laughs at new ideas. He never says that something is impossible, ridiculous, or that it cannot be done. Number 4, the educated person cross-examines his daydreams. A lot of people have become great by realizing that some daydreams can become practical realities. 5, the educated person discovers his strongest point and then makes the most of it. Nothing succeeds like success, but mainly because a person has found his strong point and has learned how to play it. 6, learn the value of good habits and how to form them. 7, know when not to think, when to call in the expert to do your thinking for you. Dr. William Mayo once said, "It is not surgery that kills people, it's delayed surgery." Number 8, you can't sell the educated person magic. It's amazing and pitiable the great number of people who believe in luck, charms, special days, signs, Black Fridays, and other superstitions still around from the Dark Ages. The educated person throws superstition right out the window. Number 9. The educated person lives a forward-looking, outward-looking life. Psychology divides the world into two classes, introverts and extroverts. The inward-looking introvert loses health, efficiency, happiness, and so on, while the outward-looking person builds, constructs, organizes, achieves, and harnesses the energies of the world. Now, most of us are a combination of both introvert and extrovert, but it's important that we turn ourselves and our minds outward, not inward. Number 10, the educated person cultivates a love for the beautiful. Beauty can be a fine book, good music, nature, a painting, any one of a million things. The educated person sees beauty in just about everything. So those are the 10 marks of an educated person. Now, how did you do? The next time little Clyde or Hermione asks you why school is necessary, tell them about the 3 P's and the F that only an education can give you: poise, power, peace, and freedom. 4 things that every human being wants, but only those who have taken the time to obtain an education can have. And if you're already out of school and feel you kind of skidded by, an hour a day can give you the education you seek. Just 1 hour a day for the rest of your life. In getting a really good education, here's a terrific book to start on. The Outline of History by H.G. Wells. The history of the world, as exciting as a novel, all in one volume. Thank you. One of the most famous names in the world belongs to a woman. The name is Elsa Maxwell. Every real person who's ever known her likes her. Her life story reads like the wildest fiction, and in May of 1960, an article appeared in This Week magazine written by Elsa Maxwell, titled How to Live a Long and Merry Life. In this article, she told of 4 rules her father gave her when he lay dying in San Francisco after the great earthquake had practically leveled the city and wiped out what few possessions her family owned. And with Miss Maxwell's permission, I'd like to pass her father's 4 rules along to you. They're worth remembering, these days more than ever. So here are the rules a dying man whispered into the ear of a pudgy, lonely little girl whose face would never be her fortune, but whose generosity, wit, and charm have captivated millions. Here are the rules. Number 1, never be afraid of they. Being afraid of what they think will squelch whatever creative spark God meant you to have. They is only a collection of yous, me's, and she's. The judgment of they is unimportant. What you think is right is the only thing that distinguishes you from any other soul on earth. Number 2, never collect inanimate objects. The more you own, the more you are possessed. Own nothing, but give what can't be bought. Give of yourself. Give fun. Give gaiety. Give health and sympathy, and the world will give you all you need. Number 3, always laugh at yourself first. Laugh at yourself first, and no one else can laugh at you afterwards. And when they do, it doesn't hurt at all. So laugh at yourself, openly. And then he added, and Elsa Maxwell still doesn't know how he knew, he said, for you're going to be in the public eye as no woman ever was. And his 4th rule for his little girl was, all through life, take the light things seriously and the serious things lightly. Those are the 4 rules that have guided her life. On the day she was being interviewed, she said, I'm never tired. Every day I do the work of 10 men while having the fun of 10 schoolgirls. Last night, she continued, I went to a banquet and 2 parties, one of which I hostessed. Today, after a copious 4-hour sleep, I'm writing a chapter in my book, a magazine article, and a newspaper column. I'm giving a luncheon for the patrons of my pet charity, attending an afternoon tea concert by the greatest violinist in the world, and appearing on television. Well, that's a day in the life of Elsa Maxwell when she was 73 years of age. In addition to the 4 rules her father gave her, I think you could add, be in work you like, and work hard and well at it, and spend your free time with people you like. Work hard, play hard, and give all you can. The world will see that you're loved and repaid out of all proportion to that which you give. After reading that interesting article by one of the world's most interesting women, you might think she had read Carlyle, who said, one life, a little gleam of time between 2 eternities, no second chance for us, forevermore. That's reason enough to live well.
As General Sherman said, war is hell, and anybody who's ever been close to one will agree with that. However, war, or the prospect of war, has motivated our scientific and technological people to some almost unbelievable achievements. Compare, for instance, our old World War II anti-aircraft guns with the new rocket-powered air defense missiles. As a young Marine in the Pacific Theater, I stood on the deck of the old battleship Arizona watching our anti-aircraft guns turn the sky black with air-burst explosives, but I didn't see many hits. As a matter of fact, I didn't see one hit. Nowadays, though, we have computer-launched, rocket-powered, heat-attracted missiles. Once launched, these missiles home in on their prey, reacting to the target's engine heat. Being self-propelled, they track the enemy with deadly precision, and regardless of its speed or evasive action, almost always score a hit. Now, I see a parallel, and I think you will too, between the old and the new weapons systems and the way in which many of us operate. Take a salesperson, for example. Some salespeople, like the old anti-aircraft projectiles, aim at their target as best they can and proceed along a predetermined sales track. But if their target, the prospect, fails to perform as predicted, they miss the sale, and if they miss by an inch, they might as well miss by a mile. In selling, one doesn't get paid for near misses. Other salespeople, like the new heat-attracted missiles, sense the prospect's reactions and adjust to them. Personal interaction with the prospect guides their presentation. They can double back, change pace, or make other creative modifications necessary to close the sale. Now, the difference between these two types of people lies in what's been called empathy-ego balance. And it's applicable not only to salespeople, but to men and women in all areas of activity where persuasion and communication and leadership are important. David Meyer and Herbert M. Greenberg discussed this in the Harvard Business Review. I see empathy as the ability to imaginatively project ourselves into another person's situation, to stand in his shoes. The man who possesses great empathy can sense the feelings and reactions of others and can change course as the situation changes. The empathic person, for example, picks up an infinite variety of cues and clues about his listener's feelings and convictions. He is, in effect, experiencing these along with his listener. The person with little empathy functions like the old weapons. Once he launches into a subject, he follows a given course of action with little regard or awareness of the feelings of his listener. Now then, ego means self, as in self-restraint, self-respect, self-esteem. To understand this, we have to disregard the popular but inaccurate conception that equates ego with big-headedness or conceit. The ego we're talking about here is the mental picture a man has of himself and his abilities. Ego provides the drive a person needs. It's his propulsion. His ego makes him want and need to succeed, not just for the money or merit to be gained, but for a deeper and more personal reason. His self-image improves dramatically with success and diminishes painfully with failure. Ego provides a strong competitive instinct to win every race every day, a will to win that triggers extra energy when extra effort is needed. Now, both empathy and ego are functions of the mind and powerful tools in any interpersonal situation. Best results are achieved with a strong balance of both empathy and ego. The key is balance. Let's go back to our sales example again and examine what happens when a salesperson's empathy-ego combination is not in balance. The one with lots of empathy but too little ego drive may be a fine person. He's a good guy and has many friends. You'd think he'd be a top producer, but he usually isn't. He gets along with the prospect, understands him, and frequently brings him near the close, but he lacks the ego drive to move the prospect that final inch to the sale. People like him, but too often end up buying from someone else. Now, just as inadequate is the salesperson with lots of ego drive but too little empathy. He'll bulldoze his way through to some sales, but failing to understand his prospects, he misses many more. He forgets that a sales situation is not a contest where one person wins and the other loses. Either both win together or both lose. So you see, the key is balance, that wonderful balance of a strong sales drive and a deeply empathic nature. Those who have cultivated this balance are invariably found at or near the top. So how's your empathy-ego balance with the people you come in contact with every day? If a need for greater empathy is indicated, this is an attribute that can be developed with practice. You might recall the advice Atticus Finch gave his young daughter Scout in Harper Lee's great novel To Kill a Mockingbird. He said, "You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it." Remember, everyone needs friendship, prestige, independence, achievement, and group membership. And in addition to these universal needs, each individual has his own particular interests and desires. Keeping his needs in mind will help you see things from his point of view, get a feeling of what's taking place inside his skin. Trust that feeling, act on it, and you'll find your empathy increasing with use and practice. To become stronger in the ego department, you might consider that all the great leaders are individualists with a healthy degree of self-esteem. Reasonable egotism is part of character and strength. Don't demean it in yourself or others. Reflect on what others have accomplished, men having no greater opportunity or personal resources than you now command. Your ego drive will increase with an increase in your knowledge of the range of accomplishments you can achieve. An improvement in your self-image, a raising of your goals, will open the door in the wall you may have unknowingly built around yourself by past performance, past environment, past thinking. The man or woman with a strong empathy-ego balance is dynamic and self-reliant, has endless drive and energy, and is concerned about other people and himself. He's mentally balanced to solve the problem, achieve the objective, hit the target. Such a person is a guided missile who's more wonderful than any scientific development man can ever dream of. And this kind of person is a great person to be with, or to be. This is Earl Nightingale, and thank you.
It's true. And so if we're going to develop something, this is a good place to start. To think deliberately and with a purpose. To spend a little time each day before a blank sheet of paper with our goal perhaps written at the top, and come up with some fresh, new, and exciting ideas. The next point on our checklist you might call the law of laws. That's what Emerson called it, this great old law of cause and effect. That our rewards in life will always be in exact proportion to our contribution, to our service. We all know this, really. We tell our children in Sunday school that as ye sow, so shall ye reap, but we forget that that's true. If a man is unhappy with his rewards, all in the world he's got to do is find ways of increasing his contribution, his service. It's like the story of the preacher who was driving down a country road, and all of a sudden he came to the most magnificent farm he'd ever seen in his life. It was beautiful. And so he saw the farmer approaching the road on his tractor, and so he hailed him, and he said, "My good man," he said, "God has certainly blessed you with a magnificent farm." And the farmer thought for a moment, and he said, "Yes, you're right, he certainly has. But you should have seen this place when he had it all to himself." And the preacher had his sermon for the next Sunday. He realized that all the farmers up and down that road had been given the same land, but one man had made something great out of it. Well, all of us are given the same land. We're given a human life, and each of us can make something great out of it, too, if we want to. The next point might be simply the word truth. Since everything we do has an equal and opposite reaction, unless what we're doing is based on truth, we're building on sand, and it can't stand. The next point would be R&D, research and development. None of us would want to work for a company or invest our money in a company that didn't have a very viable research and development department. That is, pumping a good percentage of its profits back into research and development because its future depends on it. But so does a man's. And you might ask yourself, how much of your own take-home pay have you spent during the past year for materials calculated to make you smarter this year than you were a year before? Calculated to make you a little better, a little bigger as a human being, to perhaps love a little more and hate a little less and do a little better job than you did a year ago. How much money are you pumping back into yourself and your future? It's worth thinking about. And finally, the strangest secret. At the beginning, I said, what makes a child grow up into the human being he becomes? Well, this is the reason for that. Of course, he's the confluence of a genetic pool that goes back for thousands and thousands of years. His environment has an influence on him, of course. But what makes him become the person he becomes is that he becomes what he thinks about most of the time. It's as simple as that. We become what we think about most of the time. And that's the strangest secret. This is why thinking is so vital. This is why a goal is so important. Because we will become that. This is why people who set goals achieve them. The trouble with men is not in achieving their goals. They do that. It's in establishing them. Well, that's about it. I think it's good to remember that if we just go along with the crowd, we won't wind up with much more than the wish that we could do it all over again, and as far as we know, you can't. If we want to amount to anything as individuals, we need individual goals, individual thinking, individual actions, and we must never conform to the big group. We must love them, we must help them, we must serve them, because our whole success will depend on our ability to do these things. But never lose our own individuality and our identity by permitting ourselves to become submerged in what has historically proved itself to be little more than a suffocating sea of indirection and purposelessness. If we want to emulate someone, fine, but let's be choosy in whose steps we follow. It's the only life we've got. And remember to think. Imagination is everything, and we can become what we can imagine. If you find yourself getting depressed and down at the mouth, as we all get once in a while, you might want to remember this quotation by Dean Briggs. He said, "Do your work. Not just your work and no more, but a little more for the lavishing's sake. That little more which is worth all the rest. And if you suffer as you must, and if you doubt as you must, do your work. Put your heart into it, and the sky will clear. And then out of your very doubt and suffering will be born the supreme joy of life." Believe it or not, in an age when we've come to nearly deify leisure time, we've almost lost sight of the fact that virtually all our satisfactions, rewards will come not from our leisure, but from our work. And don't forget the strangest secret. We become what we think about. Every business, every organization, from the smallest to the very largest, needs a leader. They have their committees, their echelons of command, and perhaps a widely dispersed group of semi-autonomous divisions. But the overall company and each of its divisions must have strong and able leadership. Contrary to popular belief, you do not raise morale in an organization. It filters down from the top. The attitudes of the people working in any organization will always reflect the attitude of the leader. And finally, this leader will always be found to be just one person. I'm sure you're aware that even the largest and oldest companies, with many thousands of employees and hundreds of management people, will, when they find themselves in trouble or not doing as well as they should, seek out one man and place him in the position of final authority. The whole company, the board of directors, and perhaps thousands of stockholders all look to this one person for leadership and success. Wherever you find a successful going concern, whether it's a government, a business, a club, or a well-organized home, you find behind its success an outstanding leader. This is the most valuable person in society. In industry, he makes the wheels turn, the entire economy work. This is the man who's been responsible for the growth of nations and their position in the world. He's the employer of millions. He's the dreamer, the planner, and a clock to him is something that other people watch. You'll find him working early and late, and when he's not working, he's usually planning. Back during the Depression of the 30s, the phrase most often heard by employers was, "I'll do anything." Millions were unemployed. Thousands of business firms had closed their doors, and outside employment offices Long lines of people stood waiting for any kind of work. It was during this time in Long Beach, California, crowded to overflowing with thousands who had migrated there looking for work, I know because I was a kid there, that a man I knew made an interesting discovery. He found that he could go to work almost anywhere he chose. Now, amazing as this may sound, it's true. It dawned upon him one day that the business establishments of various kinds were just as anxious to succeed as were the people looking for work. The owners and managers of these businesses were worried and concerned over the hard times which had descended upon the country. And a great many of them were looking for someone to come to their aid, the person who would somehow show up and solve their business problems. But all they heard was people asking for work and saying, "I'll do anything." These people were asking for a paycheck from a man who was very likely teetering on the brink of financial ruin himself. And so signs appeared in windows all over the land, reading, "No help wanted." This was a negative form of advertising, and while it kept the plaintive hordes away from the door, it also hurt business. Well, this friend of mine decided to become a part of the solution instead of a part of the problem. And his method was simple, and it worked like a charm. He selected the kind of business he felt he would like to work in and in which he could build his career. He then devoted a month to finding out all he could about that particular business. He talked to other people in the same line. He heard their problems and what they felt was wrong. He talked for hours, asking questions about what they felt was needed and so on. He went to the public library and read everything he could find on that industry. And then he began to think of ways and means by which this business might be improved. When he was ready, and finally made his call on the company for which he decided to work, instead of asking for a job, he said something like this: "I believe I know of several ways in which your business can be greatly increased, and I'd like to talk to you about them." Well, here he was, selling the one thing on earth in which his prospect was most interested. The fact that he now knew a good deal about the man's problems permitted him to talk intelligently. And he took a positive attitude, expressed a willingness to pitch in and help the man put his business on a sound and profitable footing, and that's right, he got the job. Now, what had he done? Well, first he had specialized. He had selected one line of work and decided that was where his future would be. Now he had to prove himself, and he did. The best way for you to develop the security that lasts a lifetime is to become outstanding at one particular line of work. Look at it this way. Regardless of economic ups and downs, the industry of which that line of work is a part will continue to operate. It won't shut down completely. As long as you're in the top 5% of the people in that industry, you know you'll always be in demand. You'll be wanted and needed, not just where that industry is concerned, but where you and your family are concerned also. The man or woman who becomes truly outstanding at what he or she does has the world on a string. Here's the person of confidence and peace of mind. Here's the person who's quietly aware of his ability and intimate knowledge of his job in his particular industry. Ask yourself this question: am I now such a person? Down deep inside, you know the answer. If your answer is yes, you're among the most fortunate people, and in one of the smallest and most elite groups on earth. If your answer was no, it can be turned into a yes in a surprisingly short time. The first step is to make one really big and important decision. It's a decision the great majority of people never make, and suffer as a result. Failing to make this decision keeps a person from ever really getting on course or clarifying his goals. If you make the decision I'm now going to recommend, you can take a deep breath, give a comfortable sigh of relief, fix your eyes firmly upon your target, and go to work relaxed, comfortable, and sure in the knowledge that the success you seek will be yours. The great steel magnate Andrew Carnegie, when asked the formula for success, answered, "Put all your eggs in one basket, then watch the basket." Let's be frankly realistic. Who gets laid off work during an economic slump? Well, what gets thrown over the side when a ship is in danger of going down? Everything not absolutely vital to the operation of the craft and the safety of its passengers. And it's the same with a business or any other organization. With a corporation, its main purpose is to remain in business forever. As long as it remains in business, it can provide a needed product or service, protect the investment of those who have faith in it, and provide jobs for those who are vital to its continuity of operation. It's the duty of management to protect the firm and the people who depend upon it, just as it's the captain's duty to do everything in his power to keep his ship sailing. All a person needs to do is to make certain that he or she is a vital part of his business or organization. Those who insist on remaining spare gear must expect to be jettisoned when things get too rough for safety. Nobody, particularly the captain, likes to see cargo thrown over the side, but if it'll help save the ship, there's simply nothing else to do. That's why people are laid off. It has nothing to do with management and labor relations or personalities, and in the long run, it's best for everyone, since once smooth sailing has again been reached, additional employment can be made available. So each of us must decide whether we want to be part of the cargo or a member of the crew. It's said that millions suffer today from a malady called panophobia. Panophobia means fear of everything. It's an uneasy feeling, a feeling of insecurity that generally manifests itself as a sort of lump of fear that settles right behind the belt buckle, especially on Sunday evening and on Monday morning. And this extremely unpleasant condition is said to result from the unspoken but realized fact that we're getting credit for more than we're actually doing. It's the perfectly natural and normal understanding deep within each of us that there's something basically wrong about getting praise that's not earned, or if you're an employee, being paid for something you're not doing as well as you possibly can. Now, there's a simple cure for this malady. It's to throw ourselves not out of a window, but into activity, into our work. It's the decision to be worth more than we're being paid. Only in this way can we grow. It's overbalancing the scales in the service we give, knowing that our rewards must follow as a natural result. Now, anyone who will be honest with himself realizes that he's been happiest and most satisfied after having successfully completed a difficult job. You know, a leader is a person who can help others. A leader is any person who realizes the importance of becoming a bigger and better person with the passing of every day, week, and month. A leader takes the responsibility of his own growth. He's a planner, a thinker, a doer. Now, each of us can become such a leader in his own area of activity. It's not difficult, and in the long run, it's easier for us and on us than what at first may appear to be the easier of two courses. Simply fix your eye upon your goal, visualize it with every ounce of your being, and courageously set out toward it. Become a kind of sponge for information which will help you on your way. You don't have to waste years making the mistakes others have made before. You'll be surprised at how quickly you'll reach your goal. But don't be impatient. Know and have faith that what should come to you will come to you in the right time. Everything in the world works on the side of the person who works with nature's laws. And above all, if you should forget everything else, remember that everything about you, everything you will ever have, know, or experience in any way, operates as a result of a law that is true and unchanging, the law of the stars and of the balance of the world. As Emerson wrote, let him learn a prudence of a higher strain. Let him learn that everything in nature, even dust and feathers, go by law and not by luck, and that what he sows, he reaps. Look about you now. Take stock of your present situation, because it's nothing more nor less than the result of your past sowing. Are you happy with it? Is it what you want? Then you know what you must sow today and tomorrow and the next day, and in the sowing rest in the calm, serene, and cheerful certainty that having sown, you will then reap the rich results, the abundant harvest.